The stock market's open from 9:30 to 4, but what time should you actually be day trading? What's going on, guys? It's Christian from Stock Hours. I want to talk about why I trade off the open pretty much every day and why I'm not here later on in the day. So I'm a breakout scalper, so one of the main or one of the most important things that I'm looking for in my trades is going to be high volume and volatile moves. So the first 30 minutes to the first hour typically is where you're going to get the big move for the day. The rest of the day could be choppy or it could be slower breaks, even if it does continue. But typically, the first half an hour to the first hour are where the main move of the day is going to occur. So, as a breakout scalper, I'm usually gone by 11 o'clock. That's my cutoff time, but a lot of times I'm gone by 10:30, maybe even 10, depending on the day and the price action. Um, Due to what I just said with high volume and bigger moves off open. And I'll show you guys some examples of what I'm talking about with that. And another thing, being a scalper, a lot of these trades are going to be quick off open because of how volatile the market is, but you'll still be able to catch a good move on your underlying stock. So, for example, if I'm in a trade for 2 to 3 minutes in the first half an hour of the market, the stock is going to move a lot more than if I was in a trade for 2 to 3 minutes at 1 or 2 o'clock, which is, a couple hours before close. Just because most of the volume for the day comes in right off open, so that's where the biggest moves are going to happen. And then with that, basically, a lot of times, majority, if not all, of the daily range is going to happen in those first 30 minutes or the first hour. And then for the rest of the day, we could chop, we could retrace. It could continue trending, but most of the times, majority of the move, if not all of it, is going to be right off that first opening hour. Um, and the reason I don't take later day trades, for example, a high of daybreak at like 1 o'clock or something like that, it could still work out. It's just going to be a much longer trade, and the volume isn't going to be what it is off open. So when I'm looking at a scalp for a breakout, I want to see strong momentum and strong volume so that when it breaks a key level for like high of day, for example, it's going to break aggressively and then hit a good profit target relatively quick. If you're taking that trade later on in the day, it could take 10 to 15 minutes just to break by $1. And for me, that's not something that I love to be a part of most of the time. I usually like being in for a couple minutes for $1 break. Obviously, depending on the stock, but it's a good way to look at it. And let me show you some examples of kind of what I'm talking about here. So I'm going to go through a couple stocks and then show you how the moves off open are more aggressive than later day. So you can see this right here is Meta. So right off open, we went from 378 to 382.50. So that's a $4.50 move within the first 10-15 minutes. And then we did break out later on in the day, but the breakout was, you know, at the high here, less than $2. And this was a 2 hour break. So that just shows you that this move was way more aggressive and way quicker than this move, for example. So that was Friday. Let me just go through the days and then kind of show you what I mean here. So again, off open, here's the first hour. Or here's the first hour actually. But 11 o'clock, that's usually my personal cutoff time. So let's go with that, 11. And then you can see the rest of the day we kind of didn't really do much outside of this range. So we did break a little bit, but most of the day we spent in this initial range. Now let's just keep going. See, this is a perfect example of what I mean. In the first 30 minutes, we had put in this range here, and then pretty much all day, we stayed within that range. Even though we bounced all the way back to high of day, when it broke high of day, that's not a strong breakout at all. And these are 5 minute candles. So 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. Yeah, 25 minutes outside of that high of day to only break by, 50 cents. So that wouldn't be a good trade um, at all, really, knowing that there's no real volume breaking it. And then the momentum outside of that is very weak. And that actually brings me to one of the points I said before with the volume. You can see volume here off open is way higher than pretty much the whole day. Over here it picks up pretty randomly, to be honest, but yeah. And then here's another example. The first 30 35 minutes we had put in a big move off open. The rest of the day we did continue going down a little bit, but not as strong. And then you can see that these breaks, it kind of wicked, came back, wicked again. Yeah, and then it was a very slow break. And then last example here, strong move off open. For the rest of the day, we kind of stayed within that range. We broke it a little bit here, but came back and then just chopped around. So let me just go to another stock. Let's do NVIDIA. Okay, so this day here, we were obviously choppy all day, so this is going to be harder to say, but you can see that once we had put in the initial range, we literally stayed within it the whole day. Here, so going to 11 o'clock, that's my personal cutoff time, and then we stayed within that range. So these are just day after day examples. There are going to be the days where we trend all day, but most of the time, usually after that initial move, it becomes choppy. If it does break out of that initial range, it's not the strongest breaks. So you can see like here, the bigger move was later in the day, but probability wise, if you're breaking those initial ranges that late in the day, it's not always going to be this big of a move, but this definitely would have been a solid trade. And then here's another example of how later in the day we just continued trending up. So the initial range was literally put in the first 5 minutes or whatever, and then when we broke that, we just kept trending up. So this would have been a good trend day, but for me, that's not my personal style. But let me just so here's a good example of what I mean by the volume and why volume is important as scalpers, and then why the open is going to be the best time to trade, is because you can see like all these, forget about the first one because that's always going to be like the highest volume of the day, but all of these candles here all have higher volume than the rest of the day. So you can see like we're all up here, and then we just significantly start falling for the rest of the day, and then coming into the close is where a little bit more volume steps in again. And then that's typically the story every day. You're going to have the most volume off open, and then over time it just gets lower and lower. See, volume up here and gets lower and lower throughout the day. The middle of the day is usually the lowest volume, and then the end of the day it picks up a little bit. And then obviously the beginning is going to be the most. But this is basically why I trade the first hour to the first hour and a half of the market as a breakout scalper. If you have a different strategy, you might do better in these ranges. So this might be where you would want to step in. So let's say we break the initial range here, you might want to play rejections after that break. So that might be your strategy. But for me, I like trading breakouts, and with that, this is going to be where you get the most aggressive move, is right off open. Those first 30 minutes, first hour, and then you have the most volume backing that trade. Now, like I said, if you were to break a significant level later on with low volume, there's a good chance that it'll fake out and then come back into that range or something like that. But hopefully you guys like this video. Let me know what time of day you guys like trading the most. um, it's all really dependent on your strategy, but for me, obviously, open is where I do best. When I take trades later in the day, they're very slow, so that's not my style. I like quicker trades. um, but yeah, hope you guys like the video. See you guys soon. Peace.